Uh-oh. Good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
Am I on? Probably not on. I don't know what I'm doing up here. So that's what happens when someone introduces you as a good speaker. You mess it up right away. Okay. So I have not gotten to meet most of you, or if I have, it hasn't been a long introduction. So just a little bit of background on me, because if I had told you a year ago what I would be doing this April, it would not be standing up in front of you giving you an update on Camp LRCA. So a little bit of background. My wife and I were privileged to serve in inner city St. Louis for 8 years. And during that time, we quickly learned that camp was the most important ministry tool that we had. In fact, we came to say that we spent 51 weeks a year doing ministry in the city so that we would get our 1 week out in the woods every year, because it made that much of an impact on our kids. And so when we had a chance at the end of those 8 years to take a position running a camp in North Carolina, we jumped at that chance. We were excited because we had learned that when you take a week and you spend it with God's people, in God's Word, in worship, prayer, fellowship, and fun, God shows up. And when God shows up, everything changes.
He is faithful.
And so the number of decisions made at a week of camp paled in, or the number of decisions made the rest of our ministry that year would pale in comparison to what happened at camp. And in different years, God worked in different ways, but it was always awesome to watch God show up. And it seems like He has declared camp holy ground. And it didn't matter if it was the little camp in DeSoto, Missouri, or Camp Mack in Illinois, or a camp like Streamside in Pennsylvania that we were at for a while, that they had lots of facilities. It wasn't about the facilities. It was about taking that week and the relationships that were formed, the memories that were made, the worship that happened, and just that intense time together. I know that the kids that walked out into junior church, they think that camp is about the pool and about the crazy games and about some high energy worship, and all those things are awesome and they're good and they make memories. But then 10 or 15 or 20 years, you look back on your experience at camp and it was so much more than those things. There's lifelong friendships and there's memories, and then there's those decisions. So many people trace back their either decision to be baptized, or their decision to go into ministry, or their decision to get more involved in what God was calling them to do, to camp. Story after story we get to hear no matter where we are. And so it's easy to be passionate about camp. About a year and a half or so ago, we moved back to the area. My dad had gotten sick. We wanted to help my mom out. And so we moved back. We didn't know what life was going to look like. I ended up starting an MBA program. We were working on starting a ministry in Indianapolis and doing the groundwork for that. And during that time, I reached out to Camp LRCA and I said, hey, you know what, I grew up here. I love this camp. My daughter went here this summer. I can see that there's some issues. If you guys need a second set of eyes, I'd be happy to volunteer to consult. And as all boards do, they took a long time in getting back to me. That's just how that works. And so when they did, it was near the end of November, and they were into their budget process. And I thought I was getting involved to help out with maybe some cultural issues or some organizational issues, maybe even some competency issues in some areas. And what it turned out to be was much deeper. They were working on the budget for this year. They couldn't get it to balance. They couldn't figure out why. And when we got into it, we realized that camp was in a lot of trouble. Camps always run on the edge of trouble. You know, not many ministries say, man, what are we going to do with this extra $100,000 we have this year? That's not normal. It's always tight. But we were looking at bankruptcy, and we were looking at bankruptcy really fast and really ugly. We had maxed out some of them a couple years ago, maxed out the credit cards, maxed out the line of credit. Vendors had stopped working with us because we were overdue to so many of them. We had disconnect notices from NIPSCO. We were overdue on our mortgage, and we were behind on withholding taxes to the IRS. So there was nothing that looked good, and we were going into January, in February, which are terrible months cash flow wise, because some of your biggest bills are due. You have the least amount of donations for the year, and so January and February together about a negative $40,000 in cash flow for those 2 months, and we had no money, no access to credit, and we were behind on every bill. The lights were going to get shut off and the bank was going to come in if the IRS didn't beat them to it. And so December looked really, really ugly, and every day we were asking how this happened and why this happened and if there's a way out and if there should be a way out. Is Camp LRCA worth saving? And what we kept hearing in meeting with churches and church leaders over and over again was, it's worth saving, we want to save it, but we're not going to invest kingdom resources in something that's going to end up failing anyway. But we're not going to invest in bankruptcy. And so of our limited options, we started looking around. Chapter 11 was talked about for a while, but it was, frankly, we couldn't afford it, and it's not hardly ever a good decision for a Christian ministry to enter into anyway. Refinancing, we talked to banks, we talked to ministries. Nobody would refinance us. And frankly, if they had, it would have been crazy, because the refinance would have put us up near $1 million in debt into a mortgage, and that payment's $9,000 or $10,000 a month. And quite frankly, we couldn't handle $9,000 or $10,000 a month in a mortgage payment a month at this point in our history. And so that wasn't an option. Churches were not interested in giving a couple $100,000 just so we could shut the door gracefully. And so it looked really, really ugly. And we were coming to our January 15th meeting. I don't know if anybody here got to attend that meeting. But at that meeting, the hope was, when we said it, was we would know how bad the problem was, and we would have a plan forward. And up until 5 days before that meeting, there was no plan forward. The plan was, we're in trouble, we're going to go bankrupt, and it's going to be ugly, because a lot of people had put their name on the line for a lot of those accounts. And so a lot of board members that had served 10 or 15 years ago, those companies were going to come after them personally. The IRS was going to come after the board personally, and we were going to lose the property to the bank. And so that was going to be terrible. And to think back and to know that LRCA has 90 years of history, 90 years of impacting lives, and that was all going to be gone in a flash. And so 5 days before that meeting, our plan was to cry, because that's what we were doing a lot of, crying and praying. And fortunately, at that point, Solomon Foundation, which is a church extension fund that only works with Christian churches and churches of Christ, so they lend money to Christian ministries to expand, usually to build new campuses and that kind of stuff. They came to us. We had asked them early on in the process, will you refinance us? And they laughed and they said, nobody's going to refinance you. But they did come to us with an option that they've worked with a few select ministries on. And that option hopefully will be coming to fruition in this next week or early in the week following. Basically, the short version of the story is, we will gift our property to Solomon Foundation. Solomon Foundation will put $900,000 into paying off all of our debts, and then they will gift us an additional $50,000 so that we can start on some deferred maintenance like the road and that kind of stuff. I don't know if you've been out to camp lately, but the road is more of an obstacle course than a road. And so we'll be able to do some stuff like that, and then we will lease back the property from Solomon Foundation with options for the next 50 years. So we'll have a 50-year lease. A few exciting things happen in this process. One of them is, Remember, if we had refinanced, our debt payment would be about $10,000 a month. Our lease payment for them will start out at $3,750 a month. Right now, our mortgage alone is $5,700 a month. So it frees up a lot of money initially there. The equity that they get on their books from owning camp, from holding it on their books, will allow them to make $20 million in loans to churches that they couldn't currently make because of paperwork laws, regulations by the government. So it will allow approximately 20 churches to do expansion projects, which is very exciting. And so while this is absolutely the only option that has come up, it's a great option. And it's exciting because not only, honestly, December we were thinking, how do we survive? How do we get through this? And then we couldn't even figure that out, and God comes along and He says, why don't you change your thinking from surviving to thriving? How does this ministry become healthy again and impact people the way that it always has? And so there is a lot of hard work ahead of us, a lot of hard decisions. Solomon Foundation is going to help us work through new bylaws, a new organizational structure, a new business model, and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of work ahead of us. We're not done. But we have an opportunity to not just get to the 91st year, but to prepare for the next 90 years. And so this has become a time of crisis that God has turned into a time of opportunity. And it's been exciting to be a part of that. In that process, we need some help. Volunteerism has always been an integral part of what has made LRCA, right? Without the volunteer counselors and the volunteer, there's a whole crew that does yard stuff, and most, what I do. What? Oh yeah. So I didn't think I had done anything different. Anyway, so we need, if you have skills, we need them. And if you don't have skills, I can find plenty of unskilled jobs for you to do. In fact, that's my department. On days like May 14th that we have coming up doing this work project, we actually need skilled and unskilled labor. We need people that know what they're doing, and then you need people like me that just can take out trash and clean cabins and all those kind of things. Because there is so much to do to get ready for summer. We need somebody here to cheerlead, or a group of people here to cheerlead. We need it at every church. Because the fact is, even though we're down to less than 30 supporting churches, one person can't stay connected to all those churches in a significant enough way that they know absolutely everything that's going on at camp all the time. We need to be able to communicate with one or two people here who will cheerlead. For example, Ladies' Day last weekend, or yesterday, that was just yesterday. We had 50 people out for it, and it was awesome. But just a week and a half before, we only had 4 people signed up. And the way that grew was people helped us spread the word on Facebook and that kind of stuff. We have Men's Night coming up on April 15th. This is a new thing. We're doing a steak dinner. We're serving camp rolls, bringing them back for the first time in a while. Having a great speaker, a night of worship. But the Men's Night, while it's going to be an awesome time of fellowship together, for us, it's an important step in redeveloping who we are. Because the question has been asked recently, who are we developing? Where are all of our Timothys that historically have come out of LRCA? Are we still effectively developing Timothys? And the answer is, we are, but we could be more effective. Well, how do we be more effective? We have to be more effective by getting our Pauls back involved. You see, camp over the years, especially LRCA, drew its power because senior ministers and elders and leaders in the church were involved in a deep way in our weeks of camp. They were deaning, they were volunteering, all those kind of things. And right now we have awesome involvement from youth ministers, but youth ministers are not elders. Youth ministers are not senior ministers, and we need both. It's a both and proposition, not an either or. And so we need to rebuild those links, and we need to recast that vision for what summer camp can mean, and how we can develop leaders in it. And we need to reconnect with our alumni. 90 years of history, that's a lot of people. 90 years of campers, that's a lot of people. Our volunteer and our support base, it should be massive at this point, and we just haven't taken care of it. And so May 27th through the 30th, which is Memorial Day weekend, we are trying something new. And it is, we didn't know what to name it. We've called it LRCA Family Reunion and Fundraiser, because they wouldn't let us add any more words to the title, because it's like 100 things that weekend. But we want it to be an alumni reunion. We want it to be a family camp. The camp will be open all weekend. You'll have options. You can come for a day, you can come for 2 days, you can come for 4 days. You can sleep in tents, you can bring your RV, you can sleep in cabins, you can stay in the retreat center. There are going to be a ton of options, speakers and worship and food and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be affordable for families to come. And then on the 28th, which is that Saturday, that is going to be the focus of that weekend. Someone's putting together a craft fair and vendor auction. So if you do crafts, you can buy a booth that day and help us draw a crowd. We're going to have a silent auction that day. We're going to have a free family fun day. So the pool will be open, and we'll have bounce houses up, and we'll have camp activities going on. And then that night, Solomon Foundation is going to help us put on a banquet to kind of help us announce this new phase, this new chapter in LRCA's history. And that is another exciting thing, where a bank would gladly take our $10,000 a month mortgage payment and leave us alone. Solomon Foundation is getting involved, and they want to partner with us. And so they want to leverage their resources to help LRCA take this next step. So they're paying for the food that night. They're bringing back a couple former deans. I don't know if anybody here went to camp when Jeff Higginson and Nick Tomio were deaning high school camp, but they're coming back. Jeff is going to lead worship, and Nick is going to speak that night. And so we just need help spreading the word about that, though. We are honestly so far behind with publicity and that kind of stuff this year, because we lost December and we lost most of January figuring out if we were even going to be around this summer. We're just behind. And so any help getting the word out, getting excitement out would be hugely beneficial. And I want to share, I don't want to end today without opening up Scripture and talking about one of the reasons I believe camp is so powerful. We're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 30. And this is a passage that I gravitate towards because I think it shows something really cool about God and something kind of unique about camp. And we're gonna look at 30 starting in verse 19. But even before that, we see throughout this passage that God is laying out a choice for His people. He's saying, here's life, here's death, here's blessings, here's cursings, here's prosperity, here's destruction. You have to make a choice, right? And we see God doing this throughout Scripture, even starting in the garden. He's giving Adam and Eve that choice. Here's the tree of life. Here's the tree of knowledge. Hey, choose the tree of life, right? And so we're going to pick up in verse 19 here. It says this: "This day I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursings." And it would be enough if it stopped right there, if the passage stopped right there, and it was just simply, hey, you have a choice between life and death. But here's one of the coolest things about God. It goes on to say, now choose life so that you and your children may live. God is not neutral on this choice in our life. He desires to be with us. He desires for us to choose life. He desires for us to be with Him. And so He's cheerleading in some regards for us to make that choice. And it doesn't stop with just, hey guys, I really want you to make this choice. He sent His Son. Sent His Son not just to make a way, but to demonstrate His great love for us. So that we could see, so that we could understand, so that we could feel, so that we could make that choice to be with Him. And Jesus even says in John 10:10, I came to bring that life, that abundant life, that real life, that true life, that deep life that you were created for. And I believe that camp, for so many people, is that time in our life where we get to see, sometimes for the first time, what that life looks like, or what that life could look like. I know for my kids in the city, it was as simple as their first time at camp was often the first time in their life that they had 3 meals a day for a week straight, ever. Suddenly life starts looking different. For some kids, it's coming and sitting around a table with a group of people and sharing a meal and talking about life every day. That's different, right? For some kids, it is being part of a family group all week, or a cabin group all week, that starts to feel like family. For some kids, it's having a strong male figure there every week, every day of the week, investing in them. Camp paints a different picture of life. Camp helps us see, in the way that we need to see it, God's love at the time and God's desire for us. And so, as you make Camp LRCA the place that it is, as you effort to send 20 kids to camp this week or this year, know that you are providing a place that is extending life, that it is extending that offer, that where decisions are made, where lives are changed, where the kingdom is built. And so the answer is, Camp LRCA is worth saving. And the exciting thing is that it has become apparent the last few months that God is not done with the ministry of LRCA. And we get the opportunity to come together in all of our churches and partner with God on what the next 90 years looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Matt will be available after the service, I believe, for questions. So if you have a